Hello, it's Deborah from the attic, and today I have the latest Simon Says stamp card kit ready to share with you. Let's begin with this 6x8 stamp that has lots of floral images and sentiments. And there's the little lollipop, that's just for me, so I'm going to hide it. And at the risk of dazzling you under the lights, these are 7 sheets of Tim Holtz metallic 8x8 craft stock, and they come in all of these glorious colours. This is one of those wonderful 3D, really deep texture fades embossing folders. I'm going to take this out and just show you how much depth there is and how much depth you will get when you emboss this onto your cards. We're going to do 2 or 3 projects with this because there's so many ways that you can use this. We will also be embellishing some of the cards that we make with these really sweet Nouveau crystal gems, and they come in a variety of different sizes. Another way for us to embellish our cards is to use these Chamel enamel dots. There are 3 envelopes, 2 are pearlized and 1 is buff, and they all match with the papers and the cardstock that's been included in the kit. Let me have a quick flip through of these mixed media 6x8 papers so you can get an idea of the variety that's included in this kit. And I think variety is an ideal word to describe this month's kit. I'm going to show you an awful lot of techniques because this kit offers so many different ways that it can be used. You've got papers, you've got embellishments that you can use. There's also that deep embossing folder and the metallic cards as well. I'm going to be throwing so many different techniques at you through this video, and I hope you will find them useful and inspirational, and maybe some you haven't encountered before. With so much to get through, let's start with card 1. I'm going to stamp out this image of a bird. I'm going to use a black ink pad, and I'm also going to use a Simon Says Stamp Fine Detail Clear Embossing Powder. This is one of the best clear embossing powders I've used. I think it's really magnificent. I'm going to dry the embossing powder and the ink, and then I'm going to cut my little bird out. They're quite easy to cut out. They're not difficult or awkward shapes to get your scissors in and out of. I've chosen this piece of 6x8 paper, and I'm going to put my dove at the centre of where those colours all seem to emanate from. I've got a sentiment stamped up ready on one of my blocks, and I'm going to take the black ink and just position that on one of the sort of starbursts of colour. I've glued my bird into position, and now I'm going to make it glitter a little bit with some glitter gloss from an aqua shimmer pen by Nouveau. To finish my card off, I've got a fine nozzle bottle with just some ordinary PVA glue in it, and I'm going to stick down some of those really pretty Nouveau crystal gems. Once they're glued down in place, I hope you can see the shimmer from them, and our first card is complete. For our second card, we're going to use one of the pieces of metallic card which I've cut down in the 3D embossing folder, and I'm going to run this through my Sizzix machine. Now, if you're using a Sizzix machine, take off the top cover and just add the embossing folder on plate 1 with one of your cutting plates on the top. You don't need both. If you're not using Sizzix, have a fiddle around and find what works best for your machine. This is how it looks when it's pulled out. Loads of shimmer, loads of colour. I've got a little sand block, and I'm sanding down the top of the colour from the raised sections of this embossed piece of metallic card. It's very difficult to show you because everything's so glittery, but I hope you can see it comes out silver. As you rub off the top layer, you have the silver coming through from below. I have some ice spruce distress oxide, and I also have a white top folding card to the side of me, and I'm putting the distress oxide all over the top surface of my metallic card. And now I've got my white card on my Sizzix platform. I'm putting my metallic card face down on that because that will then transfer the ice spruce ink to the card below when I run it through my Sizzix machine, and I think that gives a wonderful print effect. And you also have this beautiful flattened metallic sheet as well, so you get 2 for 1. We're going to use the flattened background as a nice matte and layer combination with one of the butterflies cut from one of the pieces of cardstock in the kit. And for our third card, we're going to use that beautifully printed card base along with one of the flags which I've cut from one of the pieces of paper in the kit, and I'm using that to help me decide where I need to put my fishtail in the bottom of another one that I'm going to cut freehand. In all, I'm going to use 3 of these in different colours and widths. I've got a sentiment that I want to stamp onto the yellow card. I'm just going to use plain black ink, but this sentiment is a perfect fit. And once everything is glued down on my card, I can complete it with one of my really pretty little orange enamel dots. You could sprinkle these throughout the card, I just went with one. I've cut some white cardstock down to just slightly larger than a standard card size of 5.5 by 4.25. I've got one piece so it will fit on the lower half of my card, and on the reverse of the other piece I've drawn two hearts to cut out. This is a piece of silk chiffon which I randomly had in my stash, but it's great for gluing down onto projects because you can pull it out and tease it out so you get that nice broad base. I'm adding some glue on the reverse of the lower panel of my card, and I'm going to attach my silk and I'm going to glue the whole thing down onto the bottom of my card. I've put a temporary knot in there. I will end up taking that knot out to allow me to stamp just above that line. But for now I'm going to glue the hearts into position, one in the top and the smaller one just to the right. I know it's difficult for you to see all of this because it's white. This is where I need to undo the knot to make sure I've got plenty of space to stamp my sentiment. Now I'm using not black, I'm using a smoky grey. This is a really nice soft effect and it matches everything else with the card. I'm adding some of the Nouveau crystal drops, and when they're all glued down into position, our card is complete. This time I'm going to do some embossing. I'm going to use an Altenew copper coloured embossing powder and some clear embossing ink to emboss directly onto one of the pieces of metallic card. This is a sort of coppery card that I've cut down to size so that this will eventually fit onto a top folding standard card size. Now when I heat this you can see it goes quite curly, but that's fine because we've got a way that we can fix that, so don't worry about it. And in fact I'm going to add more embossing to this. I'm going to use the closest red that I had in my stash to match a red background card, and I've taken one of the butterflies from the stamp set, inked it up, and I'm going to use the red embossing powder to add two patches of colour into two of the corners of my card. The best way to attach a bendy card from embossing to a piece of base card is to use the strongest adhesive that you happen to have. So these are nice wide strips of double-sided adhesive, and I'm going to use those across nearly every inch of the reverse of my card, and then I just have to be very careful that when I glue it down onto my card it's straight, and I think I got away with that, so our card is complete. For our sixth card, I'm going to be doing embossing it again onto the pinky metallic card from the set, and this time I'm going to be using black ink, the Simon Says Stamp Fine Detail Clear Embossing Powder, and my very loud embossing tool, so I will spare you the noise of that. This is how it looks when it's complete, and I'm going to cut out each of my little petals. This is how they look when they're cut out, and to the reverse of one of them, the one that's going to go into the centre, I've used some craft foam. This will add some dimension to my card. I've cut down one of the 6x8 pieces of card from the kit. It's the one that had the hearts on the top, and I've also got one of the lovely blue background sheets to act as my base card. I'm gluing down my dotty background, and I've chosen the dotty background deliberately that's got some sort of pinky red in the top left corner there because that will match nicely with my metallic. Now I'm just going to faff around for a little while and decide where I want to position everything before I glue it down. And I hope you can see on that central flower how the craft foam at the back adds a little bit of dimension. I've got a sentiment which I'm going to ink up with black ink, and I'm going to stamp onto the bottom of my card. I've got some Nouveau drops. These are in black, and I'm going to add these to the centre of my petals. They just pull it all together with the black of the stamped sentiment. And then finally I've got one of the little hearts which I can stick on the top left corner, and it's a beautiful match for the blue of the base card. Card 7 is going to be a very quick card. We've taken one of the pieces of paper from the kit and I've cut down the bottom so that I've got the little bird showing, and I've also taken the piece from the top of the paper. It's got that little hole in it, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to make sure that the hole is in the centre of the top of my card, and then I'm going to cut away any excess. This is a piece of the white card from the kit which I've cut down to act as my base card, and I'm going to glue the design onto the top of that. The space in the centre of this card has allowed me to use two of the sentiments from the stamp set, and I've used black ink to stamp this onto the centre of my card. To complete this look, we want to fill in that little hole in the top, and these enamel dots are the perfect size to do that. I could have chosen orange, but I've gone with yellow. And to complete my little birds, I'm going to add a hint of glimmer with my Aqua Shimmer Nouveau Glitter Gloss pen. Our next card is going to use one of my favourite techniques. I'm going to use the Simon Says Stamp embossing ink, along with the embossing powder. This is a fine detail clear embossing powder that I've used before. I'm going to stamp up the beautiful curved bouquet, and I'm going to put this on the top and the bottom of my card, and then I'm going to sprinkle everything with the fine detail clear embossing powder. Now, this is going to be very difficult for you to see because it's white on white on white on clear. Bear with me, it will be really pretty, and we're just at the point where I can reveal how it will look. Now, I've chosen to use milled lavender distress oxide ink for this card, and I'm applying this with a foam applicator, and I hope now you can see the beautiful white coming through the ink on the top of it. And I think that's a lovely effect, and when I do that on both sides, I'll leave a little bit of a gap in the middle for my sentiment. I'm going to put this card onto a base of red, which I've cut down from the kit. I'm going to glue it on top, and to complete the card, I'm going to add some of the Nouveau Crystal gems. Really simple, really quick, lovely little card. Doing the same kind of embossing with card 9, and I wanted to show you as well that the stems that are included in the kit can be bent, so you can bend them to suit how you want your petals to look. You could also use them as branches for those little birds to sit on. I'm using the fine detail clear embossing powder again, sorry about this. I'm going to add other elements such as another petal and some leaves, and then I'm going to use some watercolor pencils to colour everything in. Using the clear embossing powder and then the lovely watery effect of watercolor pencils gives this card a really soft look. I find watercolor pencils are much easier to work with than watercolors or even watercolor pens. If I want to get a nice soft effect, I will always go and reach for my watercolor pencils. I apply the darkest colour closest to the centre of the flower, then a lighter blue, and then my lightest colour, in this case blue, I reserve for the very outside of the petals, and then I pull everything together by using an aqua pen that's got water in there, and that will help distribute the colour, and the embossed clear lines help to keep the ink exactly where you want it. I've added a sentiment in black ink on the top right corner, and I'm going to glue this down onto one of the blue cards which I've cut down from the kit. For our final card, we're going to get ripping. I've taken a piece of red card, which I've cut down from the kit, and one of the sheets of paper from the pack. I'm using a ruler to help me rip down the sides of these, and if you rip towards you, that's when you get that really nice white effect from the core. This bit is a little fiddly, but it's worth persevering with. Now I've taken some of the butterflies from one of the other pieces of paper and I've cut down 3 or 4, and I may well add to these. I've decided this is the right orientation for the card, and I want to just make sure that it looks as if the butterflies are escaping from the ordinary. As you can see, I have a gap in the top left corner, and so I'm going to add a smaller butterfly which I'll cut down. I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. As always, I hope you found those techniques useful. There's so much in this kit. I'm going to leave you with some close-ups of all of the cards that we've made today, along with a little music. And until we meet again, take care.